Home State.
I'm
Woo.
Catherine.
Emily.
Madeline.
Emma.
So let's talk about the speaking in tongues video.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
What were your opinions on some of the different bilingual programs, and like what did you think was effective, or what were some things that you thought were like challenging?
Oh. Can I just say one thing that I thought was really cool? One part of the video.
Absolutely, yeah.
Remember that little kid Darrell? I think.
I thought he was awesome.
Number one, he was just awesome. But there was that little anecdote that they told about him going up to like an old lady, or he heard
At the mall, yeah.
Yeah, and it was at some sort of his family or his mom or something, and he heard an older woman speaking Chinese, and he went up and started a conversation with her in Chinese. He asked her her favorite color, and she was so impressed, and I thought that was just like the coolest thing I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
It kind of made my week.
Yes.
So.
I think it's really, that gave me a lot of hope, because it's like, if these bilingual programs, first of all, I was a little jealous. That was like my first.
Yeah,
I was
really
like, why don't
jealous.
I want to be in a bilingual program. This is awesome. I want to be Darrell.
Yeah, now we have to pay for Spanish classes, and it's going to be a lot harder.
And that's what they're saying. He was like, that is like the big, like, paradox, is that we're like, weed out all the language, but then go to college and then study it.
Yeah.
And like the best time to learn is when you're young.
I thought that was a really like poignant point.
I liked that one older, like Chinese man who was talking about it. Everything he was saying, I was like, yes.
Yeah, he was one who said that.
Yeah, and like all those videos he was watching about like the America songs and things like that.
Oh, that song made my heart hurt.
Yeah. It just, anyways, Darrell, like, that made me excited too, because I was like, we live in such a world that's really global, but a lot of languages are being weeded out.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be so cool to have a generation that is bilingual in America, that are not all immigrants, or that are like, I mean, that's important too, but that are also like people that are like actively searching out another language.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so cool.
Didn't someone in the video say something along the lines of America is one of the most linguistically diverse places in the world,
It's
but they're
rich.
still shooting for a monolingual
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
It just sounds like, but why?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't make sense. And we've been doing research for our bilingual program and for our bilingual presentation, and it's like every other country has bilingual schools, because it's just what works and it makes sense. And when your students speak a different language, you just teach in two languages.
One thing I thought was really a really good point that you had the other day was that like in America we don't say like, oh, they're Spanish proficient and they're learning English, like or like we say like they're English language
LEPs.
learners.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's not like
We don't really focus on what they have as assets. Like I was thinking of that as like in terms of like community assets map. Like if you think of a kid as that, like they have a lot to offer. Like they are a German language proficient or whatever. And
Like the beginning of the chapter, when they were saying that instead of calling that like a language minority or English language learners, they could be referred to as like emergent bilinguals, which I thought was cool.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because the first
That we acknowledge that we value the language that they already know,
I like
and that
that.
they're learning English. I thought that was really
emergent
cool.
language learners. I like that too.
Emergent bilinguals.
Because the first word in LEP is limited. Like,
That's
I didn't even think
I know, I just thought of that when you were talking. I was like, oh, that's kind of awful.
Yeah. It's just very
What kind of
and
message
and
does that send?
ELL is so like English centric. Like, oh, you're an English language learner. You're getting there. It's just
You're
like,
learning.
you're learning. But it's just like, well, they know something else that's in place of that knowledge, or that's like.
And a lot that is against bilingual education is that we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough money. It's like, well, I mean, you need to start educating your diverse students so that they'll have the chance to become teachers. You need to help support them through that journey, and then get them into the schools so you don't have to fight for these. Like, you shouldn't have to fight for a resource, a bilingual teacher,
Yeah.
because it's rare and it shouldn't be.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Like
It's a cycle.
My high school was like we had smart boards in every classroom, and like, but there were a lot of other things that we really could have been improving on. Like we could have had a really well-trained Spanish teacher, but instead she was our cheerleading coach.
Wow,
And,
same
like,
story for my high school.
Yeah, and like there were lots of other things where it was like, well, yeah, we like it's a pretty moderate income area, but like we're not there is still an ELL population, and I'm not really sure how well it was addressed. It was just kind of like pushed under the rug, and so it was just like we had resources because we had smart boards in every classroom, including like choir. Like I don't even know why you need that, but like we didn't utilize those resources in a way that like helped the minorities.
So we had the really good Spanish teacher that I've talked about, and then we had one other Spanish teacher that was also the German teacher, and he didn't really know Spanish, he just knew little bits of Spanish, and so they hired him as a Spanish teacher and cut German because more people were interested in taking Spanish.
What?
It was horrible. He was such a really glad I never had him personally, but like
so
that's the
sad.
kind of resources we had. Like,
and that makes me think so much about the decision-making process.
what? I don't know why they hire him.
Who
As a
thinks
Spanish.
that's a good idea? Like,
Let's
I'm
take
just
German
like I want to
because-
be in that room when they decide that. Like, yeah, he does speak German. Yeah, he knows like a little bit of Spanish. Sounds
Let's cut German.
Oh, we could teach it.
yeah, all right, okay.
Well, also, the thing that you're talking about with the smart boards, I don't really begin to know how funding works or any of that, but aren't a lot of those things like technology grants?
Yeah, probably.
So, are there grants for other also very important things?
Probably. That was just making me think because I was like, it's important to teach kids how to use technology because it's such a big part of their life. Like, I think it's still important. But if there are grants for that, why aren't there grants for other things?
Maybe there are. I just don't know. That raised that question for me.
Yeah.
I'd also really like to look into how schools are funded because I don't think we've really focused on that yet. Because like we know that money's tight. We know that we're not going to get paid a lot. We know that luckily we're growing. Schools are growing, so we're going to have a better chance of being hired. But for a while there, like teachers are being laid off, and I just kind of wonder, like, where's the money coming from? How much money? What's the budget? Who decides the budget? Is that the administration's job, or
Yeah, I don't.
And I also I wonder if like the people who are one thing I think is really cool is I know this lady who was she was like my pastor's wife, and she then ran for this position, and she's now working in Olympia, but she's like working on education reform. Yeah, and she was a high school counselor for a long time, spent a lot of time in schools. But I feel like a lot of people who do or pass education legislation don't spend time in schools. It's like people who pass healthcare laws but aren't involved in medicine.
Yeah, it's like
Doesn't make
yeah.
sense.
My mom goes to Olympia and kind of like talks to the legislators about grants that are or
does her own
stuff.
lobbying.
Yeah, she does her own
That's
lobbying. She has
awesome.
like a team with the school that they go over there. And she was talking to this one guy, and it's pretty much that story. Like, the guy was just like, we don't need any of those special kids in our classes. They distract the normal kids. And my mom was like, we're talking about how important it is. It's actually against the law to not include students. So,
And what does he want to do with those students? You can't just change the president.
I don't know.
They're here. That's it. Like bringing it back to the speaking in tongues thing. Well, part of what I wrote about for like that little short response was just like people who have this monolingual vision of America are just they're blinding themselves because that doesn't exist and it's not going to exist. Like so, like why
actually
try to
makes
make it
your-
happen?
It makes your children smarter to be bilingual.
Yeah.
And in that video, what really...
Improved test scores.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been proved over and over and
It
over
keeps getting
again.
improved.
Yeah.
Like everywhere else in the world is on board.
Yeah, like it's around here.
I think also like the people who want monolingual are people who are like it's not people who are speaking other languages who want monolingual. It's like majority white, highly like of high income people. Like that's who you see usually in those things that they're like. And And it just doesn't make any, like, that makes it even more sad. It's like a socioeconomic issue and like a race issue.
My aunt was talking about it, and we were at some kind of party, and I just wanted to punch her a little bit. And she was saying that, like, well, you know, Mexicans come to this country, and it's their job to learn English.
Oh.
Like, we shouldn't have to do this. And I said, oh, well, so if you go into another country, are you expected to pay for classes, work, try to find a job, and take classes after work to, like, learn this language, you know?
Yeah.
No, Americans go to other countries and just speak really loudly and slowly and think that everyone will understand.
And most of them might because they learn English.
Because they're bilingual.
It's like, oh god.
But can you imagine if someone did that, like the U.S., like someone was speaking, whatever, like Icelandic, and they came to Seattle and they're like, yeah, I will be understood if I just speak really loudly and slowly.
Like, stupid.
Let's go. Figure it out.
It's so interesting. That reminds me of the Pitaha or whatever. Like, oh my gosh, they're just like English people are so ignorant. I don't want to be part of
Part
this.
of me is like, I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree with what you're talking about. But I'm also like, I say all these things and I'm like, but I'm not bilingual. And that makes me sad.
It makes me really sad. Taking these courses has made me more than ever want to learn, well, particularly Spanish,
But, you know, it's not like we weren't, I mean, I feel like I always wanted to learn Spanish, and this was something that I have like a billion apps on my phone to try to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we just weren't given the opportunities.
Yeah.
Like, we shouldn't have to really fight to learn a second language if we think that it's necessary and going to help our career.
Yeah. I was thinking about Darrell. I think we were talking about this, about like how brave his mom was. Like, no one from his neighborhood was going to that same bilingual or dual language, whatever it's called, school. Like, that took a lot. I think that's a big factor in why people don't want to do things. It's like, well, no one else is doing it around me, and I'll go back home and my education will be totally different.
Yeah, that's
It's a lot of what the community surrounding him has to say.
Yeah.
Like he's bilingual in school.
Yeah, I just think that I've always like realized this, but this video really hit it home that when you learn a second language, it just opens up this whole new world. You get to read new books, you get to read new poems, you get to listen to new music that you understand. You can talk to, like, I don't know what the population of Hispanic people are in our area, but we can't talk to, like, what is it, like 15% of our community. And they can't talk to us because we can't be bilingual.
And that leads to so many other problems when you can't communicate. They can't communicate for what they need. Yeah?
Wasn't there like an older student, again, I was listening to the video, but
Oh yeah,
he
the
was
guy,
learning Chinese,
the 14-year-old.
and he was like
Oh,
really
he
excited
was
about going
cool.
to China.
Yeah.
Like, I really want to go to China, I really want to go and like communicate with these people.
He was
We've
really
been doing
cool.
this so long, and it is working.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so it's working, why aren't we doing more of it? I mean,
Yeah.
there's always that question, is it going to stick? Like, are you going to retain the second language that you learn? But I mean, like, he's doing it.
Yeah.
Or even talking about retention, one of the things that was cool about that movie too is that it had examples of, I think it was a Chinese girl who her siblings and even her mom couldn't communicate very fluently with her grandmother, but she could because she had been taking these classes, and so
It's such a beautiful moment when they're like cooking together.
yeah. And so even though her mom grew up in, I guess I presume a household that spoke Chinese, she didn't retain it.
I thought it was pretty funny when that Italian woman who was against bilingual education spoke up, and she was like, I don't even know what her reasoning was. She's like,
my dad
didn't let us speak Italian.
Like, that's sad.
Now you can't speak Italian.
Yeah. And now you don't speak Italian. And she was like, and right before he died, he knew how to write in English and read in English. I was like, what are you trying?
Like, cool, okay.
Yeah.
You could have also spoken Italian.
So your dad's bilingual and you're not.
Yeah, that's tragic. You're tragic.
Like, that's really unfortunate for you.
What did you guys think of the wax?
I wish we, I understand them, but it'd be cool to see how they're implemented.
Right. I agree.
And also, thank goodness we took SPED during this class because I would have no background knowledge on anything.
It was really hard for me
I was
to
looking at that and
understand.
I was like, oh wait, I know this. Why do I know this? Oh,
Yeah.
this is from SPED.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
one of those
thank
things.
God.
Yeah, that was like, well, I'm glad I'm learning this information, but it was hard for me to process it just through documents on the computer. Like, I really would have
Yeah.
liked someone.
That's what
To
I was thinking. Every
explain
time I
it
opened
to
the
me.
documents, it was like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is a lot to try and wrap my head around without having a class to discuss it with.
Yeah, it makes me sad.
So this should be an in-class class.
But it was really interesting to learn about, I think, it's like when you're, I was thinking, let's say, when I was passing all the law books in the library, there's a lot of information, you have to know all these little rules, and I think it's, I mean, lawyers have to know all this in order to win cases, and like, we have to advocate for our kids, and it's super important to know all these whacks, so that we can stand up for our kids and to say, hey, you know, our school isn't doing as much as we can.
Yeah, or as
Like, we're
much
not
as
applying
we're
to this,
required
yeah.
even.
It was really, this summer I worked at a law firm, and I so I was doing it in Boston, and it was like this totally other world. Like, everything about it was so completely opposite than everything, like any other job I've ever had. And it was so fascinating to think about, like, how things get done, and sometimes how counterintuitive they are, or just, like, the long process, or, like, the process just to save money, or to, like, meet people, and, like, all the filing and everything involved. Like, there's so much behind all of these laws.
But was the immersion helpful?
The what?
Just being in the offices with it.
Yeah,
Did
my
they
first
figure it out?
night, like my first day, they gave me this packet of like vocabulary words that I would need to know.
That's
by, like,
so cool.
2 days later, because they were all like things that I was like, I don't know what this deposition is.
Much good wife side.
Yeah. I got emails from one of my friends. She's like, "Is your day every day like the good wife?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." Maybe that's a good thing.
Maybe. Should we go over our TBIP? That was I don't know. Did anybody have any comments about that one?
Let me just review what I wrote really quick.
I guess it was how about this? I'll restate it. What can we do as teachers understand that we know and understand these rules? What's an example that you can think of?
What can we do as teachers to what?
Like implement this understanding of the WAC and all the court cases we read about. Some of the court cases seemed really, like, how was that not true before? Like,
Yeah.
oh, I like this. Or does anyone think that one of the acts or court cases were really interesting?
I think just the whole like ripple effect of No Child Left Behind is really interesting to think about, because most educators, I think, would agree that there are a lot of negative outcomes from No Child Left Behind.
That made me wonder why it's still.
Well, it's not. I didn't think. I thought Obama redid it and he made a few changes.
But when I looked on things, they weren't updated. Like,
That's right.
and so maybe it's just because it's so recent, Obama's laws haven't actually been like penetrated into the classrooms yet or the schools. But I think a lot of things are still kind of in the shadow of No Child Left Behind. And I was just thinking that like it's a law that has like it wanted to help students. Like, it wasn't trying to be like teaching to the step test and all these things. Those are just like negative outcomes from it, because they were trying to like improve funding and like different things, and like improve kids' results, and like
Higher expectations for teachers.
have higher expectations for teachers. But like, I just thought it was really fascinating to think about how, because they had all these high expectations, teachers kind of dropped curriculum and started just teaching to tests. And
A lot of pressures.
Yeah, I am. Because, I mean, the title of No Child Left Behind is a really good message and one that is particularly relevant to this class. But, yeah, and I wrote that it seemed like a lot of the goals were really practical or kind of the ideas behind what they were doing, but it just didn't, like, it wasn't realized the way that it was intended. I don't know.
And like, I want to know if they consulted like scientific research or educational research before making a lot like that law. Like, how was it passed? Like,
I tried to read up on it, and I don't think that. I don't want to say. I'm not sure for sure, but I think that they definitely could have consulted more teachers, involved actual teachers in the process,
Looks like.
or like they consulted professors.
Yeah. There's a big gap between researchers and educators. And another
That's a really interesting point, actually, that you can have, like, the title professor or, like, do a lot of research, but...
Well, our ELL teacher.
Oh.
Yes. Perpetual student. But if you don't have that classroom experience, you're not necessarily going to know all of the little details about how kids actually function and how, what, like, being in a classroom is actually like. So.
That's kind of like when you're aiding a kid along who is ELL or special ed, like you have a multidisciplinary team, like of all different areas around the school and their guardians, and you're like making this plan, and it's like annual. It seems like pretty like comprehensive and thorough, but like, is there kind of like a multidisciplinary team type structure to like passing these laws? Because it doesn't really seem like it. Like, it just seems like lawmakers and researchers, but like, what about counselors and teachers?
Know. I'd like to know more about
I went to a bit for. I don't remember what proposition it was, but it was something. And like we made huge signs, and we like marched, and
Oh, cool.
yeah, it was. I don't remember what it
You
was.
don't remember?
Oh, it was for teachers. They were trying to change teachers. They were trying to say that school districts gets to pick what the choice of your healthcare.
Oh.
And this woman said this story about how like she was gonna have her baby had complications, and if they didn't have the opportunity to change to a different health insurance, her baby would have died. And it's like, well, duh, yeah, we need to have choices.
Yeah.
But like we went there, we made this huge stink, we were yelling, and like one reporter showed up and like wrote a few notes and left, and just like we gotta work really hard to get these to advocate for our rights.
So sad.
For our kids' rights. Like, one of my things that was super interesting, it was supplier versus dough, I believe. And it was that you are not supposed to ask for a kid's social security number. So,
of course not.
yeah, like, to register for your school. So you're not supposed to ask about it, you're not supposed to ask, like, documentation. And apparently, like, the agencies that, what is it called, the documentation, Immigration and Naturalization, if they come to your school, you can't release anything, which is obvious, but you can see how, like, if you have some teachers in the staff room talking about, like, oh, this kid may not be
all my
documented.
EL students in my class, description, everything. Give her a country accent.
Is it bad? Is it? I hope I'm not.
Say it.
Would it be bad? I mean, obviously, if it's in a gossipy type interaction, that's bad. But if you have concerns or questions or worries about a student's background who maybe you think is undocumented, like we read that article a couple sessions ago about, all of these different factors that those children face in their life, and is it bad to discuss and like talk to other teachers?
Yeah, because if they're going
About
through
that?
a period, like, then other people would need to know too, right?
Or if they're worried that they're
help or like educational things, and you're discussing it with other teachers to see what you can do. Like, would that be?
I guess.
I think it would be. I think maybe it would be irrelevant. Like, you could talk about it in a roundabout way.
You can talk more about like language proficiency and like actual documentation.
Or like the student is part of like a migrant community, and this may be the struggles that we've read that other children in this situation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of more what I was thinking is like,
For
you know, they have all, they're faced with so many challenges and worries and things that would cause them anxiety just, you know, living their daily life, that might be something that would be helpful to understand as their teacher.
And this law passed in 1982, so like before that, you can imagine. Sorry, these kids. I don't know. You probably couldn't. When was the law passed that you have to educate all kids?
1991?
No.
Somebody has one?
Must have been earlier than that. That's crazy.
Maybe I'm really wrong. Don't listen to me.
Was it the Civil Rights Act in 64?
Was it?
No.
I think that started giving my kids conversation.
Maybe it would have been 64, but still, that's not that long ago.
Yeah.
In 1970, it was the Health, Education, and Welfare Memorandum, which said, where inability to speak and understand the English language excludes like these children, blah, 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 then you have to help them to understand English, I think.
What was the one that
It's a
was like, you
paraphrase.
can't ask if they're documented?
That was Plyer versus Doe, 1982.
Oh, okay. That was.
And it's kind of cool because
Wow,
that
versus
means that, like, if the kid doesn't have a number or something, that you, like, give them a number so they can get free and reduced lunch. And I think free and reduced lunch is awesome.
I'm a big fan.
That's the only meals that kids are getting when they can go get breakfast and have lunch. And
Can you imagine the fear of like not knowing the next food is going to come?
we're, like, having lunch being like, this is the last thing I'm going to get. My school had peanut butter sandwiches you could have if you finish all your lunch. You could, like, go show your lunch.
Oh, and you're still hungry?
Yeah, they
That's
give you peanut butter jellies. Which is good.
They could save them for like later.
Probably, that's
Just like if they're not going to have them.
yeah. I would eat a heck of a ton of breakfast.
Yeah.
You'd have to. Plus, like, your brain can't work when you don't have food.
And when we were watching the behavioral videos in SPED 2 weeks ago, a lot of it was like the children from hard places, children who didn't know, and you know, who were always hungry, and they would hide snacks under their pillow, even though they had been with like
Yeah.
providing families
My
for
little sister
for
still
years.
does that. She like still hides food.
Wow, just as gets ingrained in you. I
And she's
guess.
like 9 and she was adopted and she was 2.5, 3. So like that's kind of crazy.
Think about that stuff is just like, oh my gosh. There's things like that out there. I have very privileged food.
Yeah. Not only do I feel sad that I'm not part of bilingual education, I also feel really privileged. Like,
Yeah, it's through these I like felt more and more.
I think that's an important aspect of as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
To recognize.
Because I would say that, I mean, just looking at our class, we're all about the same. Like,
Yeah,
race and
gender.
race, gender, and also like financial background. We're all going to a decently pricey college, so I don't know. It's just really good to be aware of other people in the world. Is there anything we want to say about this? I feel like we're kind of petering out a bit.
I feel
Yeah.
like we're figuring out.
I think we're good. I think we talked about all of
Yeah, I wish we could talk more about.
Yeah. Well, you should watch our presentation on bilingual systems.
I will.
And then you will be enlightened.
I might watch it
Yeah.
live.
Yeah. What time you guys?
We're doing it at 2.
2.
Yeah.
I have them everything. So we're from
Oh.
1 to 2, right?
Oh,
yeah. Okay.
Right, that's
Right.
what it's my turn. I didn't know if like 2 years ago.